Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Happy Friday to all of you amazing souls out here tuning into the podcast for another awesome episode. Before we dive in, I do have some quick little housekeeping updates, things I want to say. So first of all, just a quick shout out to all of you who have purchased the apparel by now. I record these episodes in advance and I haven't had the chance to actually properly record it or announce it on the show until now. So thank you guys so much now. I love the apparel myself. I'm very excited to see you guys rocking it. Also, really quickly, just want to give a shout out to all of the patrons on patreon.com/celestialfit. Your support of the show really means a lot to me. And of course, even those of you who aren't patrons, it still means a lot to me. But, you know, those of you who are, it partially sponsors the production of these episodes, and a little bit goes a long way. So that means a lot to me. And lastly, if you haven't expressed interest in the event happening toward the end of the year that is built to help you make peace with food, your body, and your goals using my signature Peace Through Growth process system, then all you have to do is visit the podcast site and click the corresponding button. That is all on the episode webpage, celestial.fit/podcast. I really hope to meet some of you guys there. Can't wait to make it happen. But first, got to get interest. That's super important. So now that I've sped through all of that, I am so pleased to introduce you to this week's amazing athlete and online fitness coach and posing coach, Phoebe Hagan. How are you doing?
Hello, all the way from the UK.
Yes, craziness. I'm so happy to have you here. And I know there are so many people who are excited about this episode. And we were just laughing, actually, me and Phoebe, those of you listening, because I got a message literally 15 minutes before we started recording saying, you should have Phoebe Hagan on. And I was like, little do you know. So, of course, before we get started with all the awesome stuff that I've got planned for us, I just got to ask, what's one thing you do or a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage?
Or what I do before I hit the stage?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, you put a question like straight up there. So I think before I kind of hit the stage, like mentally, what I kind of think about is my entire journey of what I've just put my heart and soul into, like this prep, because show goes so quickly and you don't actually, sometimes it's such a blur. You don't remember everything that goes on in stage. So I just take a second to really appreciate what I've just done, like what I've put myself through, what I've really been working so hard for. And that's what I kind of like to do before I step on stage, as in like not ages before, because I don't like to daunt on everything in the past so much before I hit the stage, but I like to just quickly reflect on what I've done and how proud I feel of myself and stuff like that. Because I think a lot of us, once we get off stage, we kind of forget everything and it just goes so quickly. So I like to just be it myself with my thoughts a little bit, and then just get excited to hit the stage, if I'm honest.
Wow, I love that. I love that you're so in tune with the gratitude aspect and taking pride in all the work that you've done. I think that says a lot about you and the reasons why you do this, and that's just awesome. And I usually find myself reflecting a lot, like the day before going into the athletes meeting. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe everything. But I love that you do that.
I remember going in my first pro athletes meeting and I was like, oh my God, I was freaking out because I was like, this is literally everything I would have ever dreamed for or thought about, and I'm here with the pros now. It was just incredible.
Wow. Yeah, that is incredible. And there's a lot I want to talk to you about in regard to some things that you're doing that I think are going to tie into that big time. But real quickly, just want to get this going with, you recently joined Team Elite Physique.
Yeah.
We've actually had a few other athletes on here who are part of that Elite 11, right? I think that's what he calls it.
Yeah, it's Elite 11.
That's awesome. So I know you just did a bunch of testing for it. So I wanted to take the time now to understand what that was like for you and why you decided to take on a new approach at this point in your professional career.
Well, for me, last year was a massive learning curve in terms of like the pro league itself, and it was a massive eye opener in terms of like I never really truly realized how much I wanted to be within the pro league, how well I wanted to do in the pro league, and when I had my off season, obviously last year, through it into this year, it made me realize like this is what I want. And I needed change. I felt like there was something just in my heart that wasn't right when I started prep, and that wasn't my old coach or anything like that. It was just terms of I wanted to do something new, and I wanted to have like a new lease of knowledge and stuff as well. And I've been following Adam for years anyway, before he was with Ashley and stuff. And then when Ashley was part of him, I obviously followed even more, and I was more invested into his journey, her journey. And then when Laura Lee, Norman, Danny Phelps, all of that type, like people started being part of them, I was like, okay, this is something I really want to be a part of as well. Like, and I just messaged him off the off chance. And I was actually just sat in a restaurant having coffee, and I just had like a weird gut feeling. And I was like, I'm just going to message him and see what he says. And he wanted to get onto the phone with me literally within the hour. And we spoke for like about an hour and a half. And then everything just kind of happened from there. It was just, I wanted something new. And do you know what I mean? Like, I think in my heart, I felt like I needed change. Even though I knew what worked for me last year, there was so much else I wanted to learn. So yeah, we just went from there, and I've literally just got back from Denver. I got back from Denver, I think it was like 3 days ago. So yeah, and it's incredible. Like, I didn't realize how much knowledge he had, and how in depth he really goes into each individual like bikini prep. So I'm honored to be on part with Team Elite Physiques and everything like that. I'm the Elite 11.
That is so cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And he seems like such a nice guy, a great guy. Actually, he even reached out to me and said, if you ever want to do coaches, and I was like, I'm planning on it. So that's super cool. And I'm excited to have all this going into that. But in regard to everything, you've mentioned becoming part of the pro league, a big reason why I wanted you on the show as well was really because of the mindset that you have and the things that you share and the way that you open up. And you've actually started a hashtag called Know Your Own Ability, which you use as a way to prove to yourself that you can do things that you never thought you could, and you're doing it for yourself. And this has actually become so much more than a hashtag for you and also for those who are using it. So what are you planning to do with this hashtag, or what are some things you have already done?
Well, the hashtag Know Your Own Ability was created, and it was a YouTube series. So that's what I called my last year's prep YouTube series, kind of in the lead up to trying to get my pro card, because I don't think actually a lot of people know this, but probably 2000s all the way up to 2017, there was only one pro card giving out to each girl in the UK a year. So for us, super hard to get a pro card. And for me, when obviously I think the NPC came over to the UK in 2018, it was a lot easier for us to then access to get our pro cards for UK citizens. So that I took the chance and thought, I'm going to make a series and a hashtag for people to connect with that, not just with competing, but just with anything in general, to make themselves believe that they can do it. And that's what all the hashtag is about, to make themselves believe that they get their ability to know that they can do it. And yeah, so that's what I've created it because I want people to believe in themselves 100%, a lot more. And what I'm planning to do, I've done clothing so far. I've got jumpers at the moment and t-shirts. I'm planning to bring out some more merchandise hopefully this year, and I'm also going to be creating a mindset subscription site. So I'm going to be hopefully interviewing kind of like a podcast style, but like video, because I really connect with people through video, and that's why I love having my YouTube. I connect a lot with when I can see people. I'm very visual, and I think a lot of people are like that as well. So I thought a subscription site would be amazing for people in the competing world, because especially for beginners, because people don't understand, I think, how much mindset it takes to be a competitor. And you really have to be dedicated within your mind to pursue competing, especially as a pro as well. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to create a mindset subscription site for beginners, for newbies, for old for people that have advanced, all of that type of thing. So they can kind of get in touch with their mindset a lot more and see things through my eyes as well. Because sometimes when I say things, people are like, I didn't see it from that side. Because I'm very honest and I'm quite brutal at times anyway. So I would love to put that across to other people, interview other people on this podcast, on this subscription site, all that type of thing.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think subscription sites are also a great model for business as well. It allows people to learn and grow a lot at the pace that they want to and at the time that they want to. I've had a membership site before. I think it's awesome. And I love that you're doing that. And as I'm sure maybe you saw, like, a huge part of what I do is like the self-love and the personal development. And that's, again, why I really wanted to bring you on the show, because you don't just talk about the physique and the training, and you really do emphasize how important mindset is. So what do you think are some of the most important things when it comes to working on your mindset as an athlete?
I think it's really just making sure that you firstly asking yourself, when it comes to competing anyway, making sure that you're in a good place anyway, in terms of body, in terms of mind, physical, everything. You need to make sure that you're 100% dedicated. If there's something that's kind of not right, as such, within your prep, or like starting your prep, kind of make sure that it is right, and then you can go from there. Because I feel like a lot of people start prep just because everyone else is doing it, and you've just got to really truly ask yourself at first, do you want to compete? Because I think a lot of people underestimate what they're kind of getting into at the beginning, and it's not like it's a massive thing in terms of like, oh my god, you're competing, like it's the word, like really bad. It's not. But you've just got to make sure you're ready for the ride. Do you know what I mean? You've competed before. It's emotionally draining and mentally draining at times. It is also amazing. Like, it's given me so much dedication and so much mental power I didn't even know I had, and didn't even know I could put myself through. Because I used to be the girl that if I wanted a chocolate bar, I'd literally just eat it and I wouldn't care. But now I'm like, I cannot have that chocolate bar. Do you know what I mean? And I can kind of restrict, because I have a goal. And I think that's the second bit, is making sure that you know what your goal is when it comes to competing, because people just want to compete just because they want to compete, and it's amazing. But also ask yourself why you want to compete. Why is it that you want to put yourself through a prep? Why you want to put yourself through all the training, the diet, everything, and really get in touch with why you're wanting to do it. I think that's the most important thing for me. I asked myself that, I think it was my second year of competing, because I did my first year of competing and I kind of just did show after show, and then I was like, why do I actually want to compete? And it was because I wanted to become pro, and I wanted to be known within this industry. I wanted to share my message a lot more within mindset and all of that type of thing. So I really asked myself, do I want to do this? I even quit uni. I think for you guys it's college, but for uni is like college for you, university. So I even quit university for competing, because I was that strong of, this is what I want to do. This is what I want my career to be. And that's when I knew in myself that this is what I wanted to do.
I love that. I love that. It is so important. And I love what you said about knowing what your goal is, right? There are so many people who just want to compete. And you mentioned, even after multiple shows, years of competing, you still ask yourself this. And I think that's the key. Is we have a lot of listeners who are doing shows or maybe are prepping for their first show. And I think it's important to always reconnect to the why, like you said, why do you really want to put yourself through all this? And it doesn't mean that it's, you know, terrible, but it is a commitment. It does require dedication. You are going to grow into a new version of yourself, and you have to be ready for those changes. And then also understanding, and the word consequence maybe isn't it kind of has a negative connotation, but understanding the consequence of every action you take. And in competing, it's,
Yes.
are you willing to see that happen? Are you willing to create that body? Are you willing to create that mindset? Are you willing to go the extra mile, literally?
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome that, you know, you brought up actually asking yourself this multiple times.
Yeah, because what a lot of people do as well is not asking yourself as well before. It's also making sure you're ready for the after, because post show is difficult. And I know probably a lot of listeners know, if they've competed before, post show sometimes people would say is the hardest part, because then you have freedom of, okay, I don't actually have a date to work towards anymore, so I can do whatever I want. And that for some people is very difficult to control, and you've got to be ready for that, because a lot of people never are.
100% agree. Exactly. That's why I started the 8-week post show or Peace Through Growth process program, which is really about the personal development after a show, because I think we need it, like you said, before we even head into a show. We need to make sure all that shit is sorted out. But also, of course, after, like, being prepared for that is so massive. And I think sometimes as competitors, we underestimate or forget the fact that just like every prep is different, every off season can be different too.
Yes.
You know, we don't know exactly how we're going to feel. We think, you know, okay, I'm doing so well during all these shows. Like, I competed for like a year and a half straight, right? Like prepping. And I was like, I'm going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. You know, I did well in my last mini improvement season. Was like, that's because I knew I had a show in mind. Well, what happens when you don't have a show in mind?
Exactly. And this is exactly something that I was speaking about in one of my YouTubes really recently, is your starting point of of where you are mentally and physically. Last year, I think it was going into 2018, my prep, I gained a lot of weight because we needed to. And this year I knew I didn't need to build as much muscle. I kind of just needed to stay relatively lean, so I wouldn't, and kind of just have a mental rest, because I'd had a long season in 2018. And the difference, I think a lot of people think, okay, I need to do every kind of off season or prep the same. It is so different every single time, and this is something I really touched on in that video. And it's crazy how much different my off season was this year to last year. I had a lot less food, a lot less, well, still a little bit of cardio, but a lot less food, a lot more heavy training, a lot more rest. And it's just crazy.
I actually watched that video prepping for this episode.
Really? Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yes, I love it. I was going through a lot of your stuff, and that one stood out to me a lot because, of course, it's very aligned to what I think is missing in the competitive world. And I love that you were touching on it. And something you just said that I think a lot of girls need to hear, and probably would like to hear as well, is that, you know, there are going to be some off seasons where you have to put on a little bit extra, and then there's going to be some
Yeah.
where that's not the goal. I've experienced that myself. It was like, one time I was, okay, let's just stay lean, let's just stay consistent. I'm going to compete again, you know, after the holidays and blah blah blah. I'm going to start prep in October. That's going to be intense. I don't want to make it any harder than it has to be. But then it was also about the mental aspect. Sometimes it's about where we're at mentally too, like you said. It's like, okay, well, sometimes you don't need the mental break as badly. And then there's sometimes where you really do. And again, it comes down to understanding the consequence of the result of those actions or of those different steps. Like, if you go in knowing, okay, I need to put on more muscle, this means that I'm going to be eating more, probably doing less cardio, and putting on a little bit more fat than maybe I'm comfortable with. But I understand that going into it, so I can accept it.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing is that a lot of people sometimes will work towards something because sometimes you've got to understand, being in an off season is kind of like a lifestyle. That's an everyday lifestyle. That's usually like what people kind of go through. And sometimes people aren't like that anyway. Taking yourself out of competing world is very, very important, because people will rush into a competition prep straight away, like, because they don't want to gain weight, they don't want to eat loads, they want to be that lean again. But you need to be in that off season to be normal. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
competing isn't forever. You can't stay stage lean forever. You can't be in that circle forever. So you need to make sure that you're in an off season for a good amount of time to be yourself, like in a normal body. Do you know what I mean? Which a lot of
Yeah.
people don't understand. Like, you can't be lean forever. You can't be shredded forever. You need to make sure that you're in your, I call it quote unquote normal body, like a normal person's body, without all the competing stuff behind it, so you can understand living life as like a normal person. Because like I said, competing isn't forever. So you need to make sure that you're mentally okay with being in your body like that, and then you can go into competing. And I my first year of my off season, I was so uncomfortable, and I rushed into a prep because I was like, I just want to get the weight off, like I don't feel comfortable. And then my second off season, I felt, okay, I need to make sure that I'm comfortable with this. I'm happy with, I'm gaining weight, I'm going to be gaining muscle, this is getting me towards my goal. And I really found myself in that second part. And then in my third off season, then I was like, okay, now I'm happy to be in like a leanish state. Do you know what I mean? Every
Yes.
single different. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. Everything's different. So
I love that. I can hear your passion too. It makes me smile. Like, it's just so cool. And the part about living normally, I totally can relate. Like, you get so used to being in the grind of competing, or surrounding yourself with people who are competing, teammates or people you're following or connecting with online, that's all you think about. And then you forget that, oh my gosh, wait, there's real, if you want to call it real life, right? That one day you're gonna have to be ready for. And I had the same feeling this off season. I was like, okay, this is gonna be a good test. How can I maintain an lifestyle, that's still getting me to my goals as a competitor, but is healthy, makes me feel good, I'm happy, without a show in mind, or without even thinking about it, without paying attention to all these other little intricacies that we pay attention to on a prep. And it was a challenge because it's an identity shift. You have to shift your identity to no longer on prep, but now, okay, off season or building season, or time off, it's okay. And I just think it's really awesome that you touched on that and even said that that was something you had dealt with. You rushed into a prep, and we see a lot of people do this, I'm sure many people listening might even be in that stage where they rush into a prep because they were feeling uncomfortable with their body. So what were some of the lessons you learned from maybe rushing into that prep that now, moving forward?
it's so difficult because it's so individual to each person. Rushing into that prep, it made me realize that it was a great year, either or, like it was still a very good year for me, but it made me realize that I needed longer time off. I needed to build a lot more, I needed to eat a lot more, and to get to where I wanted to be in terms of like physically how I looked, I needed to kind of push myself a little bit out of my comfort zone and putting on a little bit of weight. Because I used to do cheerleading. I did cheerleading for 8 years, and we were always in crop tops, and like our uniforms were cropped, so like our stomachs were always out. So a lot of the girls on the team anyway were obsessed with having abs or looking good for pretty much our showcase. And so I've always been very physical, like as in like I want to look good type thing. And taking myself out of that kind of mindset of like, this isn't about looking good anymore, this is about, one, making sure my health is in check for starters, two, that I need to build muscle, and to do that I need to eat being a surplus, lift heavy, and three, get my lifestyle kind of back on track. Because like I said, you sacrifice a lot on prep, and if you're competing consecutively after year, the only kind of time you have to have a life as such is in your off season, and kind of do what you want and eat what you want and drink what you want is on your off season. So for me, those three things I really needed to make sure I was in tune with before I went into my next prep. So for me, my tip for other people is to make sure that your health is 100% okay before you go into another prep. Because obviously sometimes when you diet a lot, your health does take a hit. As a girl, especially, your hormones do take a hit. And I'm going to say that now because a lot of people kind of try and pull your wool over the wool over your eyes and think, oh, competing's amazing. It's all about bikini and sparkles, but it's also very, very damaging on your body if you do it the wrong way. So making sure that your health is good, making sure that you're like in a good place calories wise, and muscle wise, like if you have enough muscle, because either way you could put on weight, and making sure that it's like identifying the difference between weight and muscle. You need to make sure that you know that, if that makes sense, kind of like not going into a new prep thinking, oh, I've gained weight, so that means I've gained muscle, so I'm gonna, just go into a prep now and cut it all off. That's not kind of the case, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then, thirdly, kind of have a little bit of a life before you start prep. Don't kind of have that strict mindset the whole way through your off season, and making sure that you have that little bit of a freedom before you start prep. So maybe I went on holiday, so like not straight after, because sometimes that can be dangerous. But kind of organize things, lifestyle things, after you've come off prep, so it gives you something to stay busy. Because a lot of people, again, they'll have that strict mindset throughout the whole of off season, and then realize they'll get to prep and then be like, oh, I've done nothing, and I still now can't do anything for the whole of my prep, if that makes sense.
Makes
Yeah.
total sense. Yes, absolutely. And having that self-awareness, and also giving yourself the opportunity to let go. And that was something I had actually written about, which you pretty much covered just now. But I want to go a little bit deeper. And, many of us go through this struggle of, understanding when is the right time to turn it all the way up, and when is it okay to actually step off the gas and live a little bit more, which can mean, like you said, having the drinks you want, having the food you want. So a more relaxed diet, obviously, it's still a lifestyle, more time with the family, less obsession. I mean, pretty much less obsession. How have you been able to get comfortable with letting go? Like when you went on holiday, like what allowed you, or what got you to that mindset of, okay, it's okay?
Well, I think so. My first year of competing, I think that was the hardest. Again, I think everything in your first season you kind of learn a lot from. So like you look back and think, okay, this is what I did, and now I'm going to learn from it. Because a lot of people kind of, it's not like you make mistakes, but you learn. You make you do all the lessons in your first year of competing. I feel, because no one's going to get it right perfectly straight up at the beginning. But for me, I found letting go in my first off season was difficult. I've always been such a foodie anyway. Like I love like when I say foodie, I love healthy food because it makes me feel great. But like I also love delicious like cakes, pizza, all of that. I'm massive foodie, and I've never had a massive restriction when it comes to food or anything like that. But I do know when to stop also. So I've always had that. I've always been very athletic in that mindset. But off season tested me at a whole nother level. It was difficult in terms of I wanted to have that feeling. I had that feeling of like, I want to be strict, but I know I don't have to be. And I was always torn between that. I was always torn, like, I don't have to be strict, so why do I need to like restrict myself? It's difficult. And that was what I kind of went through with my first off season. And then my second one, I kind of got into it a little bit more and think, okay, I can let go. It's like, I can have this chocolate bar, but I don't need to have another 4 after. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I can have this chocolate bar, but I'm not going to have it every single day. Like I can have it on the one-off chance, and then have one in like, not whenever I feel like it, but like, do you know what I mean? It's not like you have to restrict so much. It was really difficult actually for me in my first off season. That was probably the worst for me. But I learned a lot from it now going into this off season. Well, when I was in this off season, so I went to LA before I started prep, and I said to myself, like, I'm not going to eat like an idiot here, because I know I've got to start prep when I get back. So I'm not going to make myself like put myself in a silly situation right before I start prep. So I kind of like always had my goal in mind. It's difficult because you mentioned the word obsessed. this will always be my lifestyle from now on. This will always be my lifestyle. I love training. I love having meals made up. I love tracking macros. I love this whole world of competing and bodybuilding. So it's difficult for me to even now step out of that kind of world and say, okay, don't have meals, don't have this, just eat intuitively. That for
Mm-hmm.
me, that's crazy. Like I wouldn't know kind of massively where to start. But this year, I definitely got in touch with that a lot more. I got in touch with like intuitive eating a lot more. And especially when I went to LA, I kind of said, right, if I want something to eat, I'm not going to have it for every meal. So I wasn't going to have like loads, because you guys have some amazing American food that we do not have in England. So I was like, I'm not going to go crazy and have American crazy food every single meal. So I'm going to give myself either breakfast, lunch, or dinner to have one of these meals, because I was there for a week. So I was like, I'll have one meal. And it's kind of just breaking it down instead of being like, okay, I'm going to go crazy here. It's just making sure that your goal is always at ease. Like if your goal is fat loss or if your goal is muscle gain, just make sure that's always like kind of in the little bit in the back of your mind. Even if you are trying to let go, you can still have your goal in mind. And yeah, I would say I'm happily obsessed with competing and my goal and stuff like that. And I'm not afraid to like kind of say that. But yeah, I've learned a lot about letting go now.
I love that. I think that's really awesome, and it's really funny that you said like, oh, I can't even imagine doing this, because I think there are people who don't prep their meals. What do they eat? Like the other day, I was
That's what I
asking my
think.
boyfriend. I was
People
like,
eat intuitively, and I'm like,
yeah,
I have a lot of friends that are lifestyle, and they just kind of that have come to me and said, "Oh, can you help me lose some fat?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course. What do you eat?" And they literally have 2 meals a day, and I'm like,
I
"How are you
know.
living?"
Oh, what are you doing? Like, this is why you're not seeing the result, but okay, like crazy. Like, I've been prepping meals since I first started, like, getting into fitness at all, like 2014.
If I
Well, it's
look
like, I just
if
can't
I
even
look
imagine.
back sorry, if I look back at my lifestyle used to be like before competing, that's what it was like. It was like I would have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack, or not even that, probably breakfast, like a massive breakfast, and not eat anything in the day, and then have a massive dinner. That's how I used to kind of like live, which is crazy to me because I look back and I'm like, I could not do that now.
I know, we know too much now.
Yeah, I know.
No, but it's true. Like, um, I started like young, young age. So I remember like the meals I was eating before was like whatever was in like the pantry or the fridge that my parents bought. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah. And then like my dad would say, like make healthy choices, and then my mom would make like a dinner, and then I would always eat like, however many rolls I wanted,
yeah.
until I became, I guess, more aware. And that's, that can cause a lot of different things or whatever. But yeah, I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did that. And then,
I think it's also as you get older, you just start. It's like children. Like when you look at children, they don't give a like they don't care about anything, and then like when they grow up, they start to care a little bit more about like their appearance, the way they look, the way they eat, all of that type of thing. Like my boyfriend's little sister, she eats so much food and she doesn't care at all, and it's so amazing. But I know obviously as time goes on, she'll grow up and kind of be okay, I'll calm it down. Do you know what I mean? Like and it's
yes.
the same with how we live our lives now. Like back then we didn't care. We were like, well, 2 meals a day is fine. Like this is okay for me. But then because we've been introduced to this world, it fits us so much better. So that's why we love it so much more.
So true. And then I think about like the intensity now that we bring into workouts or lifestyle,
That's more.
Yeah, like there's no way I can't. I'm right with that 2.5 to 4 hour mark goes off. I'm like, all right, time for the next meal. Time for a snack.
Yeah, I'm like every 2 hours when's the next meal?
Yep, exactly. And it's funny because I know we can train ourselves to go either way, right? Like kind of in the beginning, that can be difficult for people. Like I have to eat all this food, but
Yeah.
then your body adjusts and starts to thrive off of this. So yeah, I think it's pretty funny when you think of it like that. A lot of us also, I think, have that obsessive personality trait where we're just like, I'm like hungry for what I want, and I'm going to go after it with everything I have, and I'm not going to stop until I get it, which means I'm okay with becoming obsessed with it, which
Yeah.
then, we have to be able to let go a little bit, like you said, with life,
Yeah.
but at the same time, keeping that goal in mind. And um, sometimes I think, people will stress about how they look when they aren't yet stage ready,
Yeah.
which can then cause them to feel like they are never ready. So, and then sometimes they'll blame the fact that they let go a little bit. So, how do you help yourself move past the thoughts of, I'm not lean enough, or will I be ready in X amount of weeks?
It's so difficult because it's different for each person. So talking from a beginner's point of view, you've just purely got to trust who you've got as your coach, and trust yourself, and just go into that show and then make improvements from there. Because for me, I've brought on a lot of new clients because I'm also an online coach. I've had a lot of clients this year. They're all newbies, and at the moment they're not complaining, but they're like, I'm not going to be stage ready. Like, am I going to be ready? And I'm like, as a coach, I don't know if you're going to be ready in 10 weeks, but all we can do is trust the process, and then go from there. Because it's so difficult to, like, as a newbie, you haven't set the standard. You don't know how hard you really need to push your body, or how far you can push. Because I could put you on 1,400 calories or something like that, and you could be smooth sailing and losing weight every single week. Or I could put someone else on that, and they would really not be responding to that whatsoever. So it's really just setting the standard, and trusting the process 100% at first. As a newbie, as an advanced person, I think because you've already got to that stage leanness, you can get there again. So for me, I think mentally wise, it's a lot easier once you've passed your first show or your first few shows, and you've seen yourself at that lean state. Because it's so difficult. And I even remember myself being like, I generally think, what's her name? Is Michelle Lewin. I remember looking at her and being like, I'm never going to look that lean ever. How am I ever going to get to that? I remember she was one of my first inspirations to fitness. And I think it was Ashley as well. I swear it was like Ashley and Michelle Lewin were like the first two people I was like obsessed with in the competing world, when Michelle Lewin was obviously competing. But I remember looking at them being like, I'm never going to be that condition. Like, look at their glutes, look at their abs. Oh my God, their shoulders. And it's so hard to visually see yourself like that. But you've just got to get over those first few shows, so you can see your body like that, see what your weight's at, and kind of go from there. See what the methods were, and then you can improve from there. Get judges' feedback is one of the most important things, especially as a newbie, because that's your only thing that you've got as a feedback to kind of improve on. Because you can be like, oh yeah, that's great. Now what do I do? Because you're so new to it, you need those kind of stepping stones to get better. So yeah, definitely a 100%. For beginners, it's difficult to visualize, but just go through with it. If this is something you truly want to try and do, put your heart and soul into everything you're doing, and trust the process.
Yes, I love that. And I love how you said, it comes down to setting a standard, right? If we never start, if we never take the next step, if we never try the new thing, we will have nothing to go off of or base our decisions or future decisions off of. And it's so helpful for our coach as well as, as a coach. It's like you have, like, how are you supposed to know if you've never worked with them before? Like, you're just responding each week based on the history they've had and then going from there. And there's a lot of girls who don't ever, like, they start a prep, but they don't ever step on stage because they can't trust that process. And I
Yeah.
just like that you said, you might not be able to visualize it, but you have to keep going. And something I like to keep in mind too is, like, you're not always tied down to a certain amount of weeks out, right? Like,
Oh
if you
no, of course
registered,
not.
maybe, you know, but otherwise, like, if you're willing to not be, and then I think that goes back to what you said in the beginning, understanding why you're doing this. Because I think
Yeah.
people who are like, oh, I just want to compete, I'm going to do it on this date because of this reason. Okay, but then what if you don't feel fully ready, or like you've given it everything you can, or you want to go a little further, then will you be comfortable extending that date out? Will your why allow that or align with that decision to extend things out or even speed things up? Like you might be peaking really early. So I think keeping in mind, like there is no time limit, I guess you could say.
No, because the thing is as well, what a lot of people say was, now obviously, back when I first, well, I think now because social media has grown a lot, people like to share their journey on Instagram, on social media, all of that type of thing. And I think what it is sometimes it's pressure of others, as in terms of, it's not other people pressuring them, but I think people feel the pressure of others. If I cancel this date, or if I move my date, or if I kind of change my show day around, that people will think this, people will think that. And I think a lot of people go through with shows just purely, and if they feel like they're not ready, purely go through with shows just because of what others will think. And I think that is something really important to say, no, I'm not ready, I'm going to push forwards, or I'm going to hold back for a second, and that type of thing. But again, it's a mental thing, especially as a beginner. It's hard to see, like I said, it's hard to see yourself in that state. So even if you're not show ready sometimes, just keep going ahead with it. If you're pushing, obviously make sure health wise you're okay with pushing that far, but making sure that you kind of still keep going, because sometimes it's a mental thing. And sometimes I look back at photos of myself when I was saying, oh, I'm not stage ready, and I was like, I was so lean. Like, people get this a lot, and it's crazy because you don't see it yourself, because a lot of people are so self-critical. And I think not even a lot of people, I think everyone is very self-critical. So you need to make sure, especially when you have a coach, it's good for them to see you, because it's a second pair of eyes, and they can see you obviously for your full potential of what you are, but you can't fully see that yourself sometimes. So yeah, it's important to kind of make sure you're trusting who you have as a coach. Make sure they're kind of not bullshitting you and being like, yeah, you're ready, so you just keep paying them type thing. Making sure that they are actually giving you what you need and putting you on that right path to getting on stage and stuff.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that one. And I look back sometimes at old, like my, let's say like first show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck? But at that point in time, like that was the best I could bring. Like,
Yeah.
that was the best. And I gave it my all, and then I look back on, like I did this show, I did 2 shows in February. It was awesome, back to back. It was so fun. One of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. However, then I went back and I did a show in July. I was not as lean as I was in February, but I had a baseline now. Like I still stepped on stage because I was like, okay, well, at least now I can get the feedback on the muscle that I maybe put on in between these shows, or what the judges might be looking for now, or what my coach sees. And then it gave us a, perspective. It gave us a point. It's like putting that extra puzzle piece there to understand, well, what's next. And yeah, it's so helpful to do that. And also understanding, like I was thinking about this the other day, right? Strength athletes, you might say to yourself, well, okay, a strength athlete will never be like, imagine if they never competed or never decided to do a meet just because they're not as strong as the strongest man.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
like,
Oh my God, that's such a good phrase.
right? Because
Yeah,
it's like you have no way of knowing. And it's like that's like telling an NPC, an amateur athlete who's never ever stepped on stage, just registered for the NPC, don't step on stage until you look like a pro.
yeah. There's no point. Like, everyone has, like, I look back at my first ever, I even look back at pictures from like my last show in 2018, and I've already improved. Like, you will only get better. You like, and you can't just think, okay, I'm not going to step on stage until I look like Ashley Coltswater. Like, you can't have that mindset. You have to, like, Ashley, you look at Ashley's first ever competing photos, she does not look like what she looks like now. She's worked her way up, and that's exactly what every amateur has to do, every pro has to do, and just everyone in general that steps on stage needs to do.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think, there is going to be a time in your journey where you've done this enough, you're getting ready, you're about to maybe step on a national stage. You have an understanding of what the judges are looking for and expecting from you, and also from those who are going to be earning their pro cards. So I think, you can never have that opportunity, though, to know and to have the knowledge under your belt unless you take the first step or even the second and third step, right? And understanding it's okay. And I'm actually curious from your perspective, have there ever been times where, you had to change the way that you looked on stage and maybe it wasn't as lean as you were before, but it was something the judges asked for, or maybe the opposite is true? Has anything like that ever happened?
Well, the thing is with bikini especially, it is always changing. It's not like bodybuilding and you can be the biggest and leanest guy and you hit a pose, hit a double bicep and like that's kind of it. Bikini, it's like a whole different type of world. It's like you have to be conditioned but not too conditioned. You have to have full glutes but not too much glute. It's all about who also shows up on the day. If you are the most shredded girl there and everyone else is soft, it's going to make you look too shredded, but you're not going to know that before you step on stage. So it's so difficult, especially, and this happens more so in the pro league than the amateur league. And this is something that I've learned a lot last year. It's always changing. I remember, I think it was from a few shows, I kept on coming second. I was like, how can I get my first place? And they said, you need to come in leaner. And that show, I didn't come in as lean. And they said, okay, you need to be leaner. My next show, I came in so much leaner than I was, but everyone else was softer and was
Uh,
fuller, had more like fuller muscle bellies. So I looked flat and too conditioned. So for me, it's all about going, obviously listening. Like, I'm not saying don't listen to the judges, because you need to listen to the judges, because obviously that's your um main point of improvement and stuff. But you also have to bring a package that you like to stage. So if you're getting leaner and leaner and leaner and you hate how you look, then ask yourself, is this something that you really want to kind of carry on with, in terms of like you're just kind of getting leaner and leaner and changing yourself for kind of someone else's eyes. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense?
yes,
Like,
absolutely.
I've never got to the point where I hate how I look in terms of like leanness or like fullness or softness or anything like that. I've always loved the look I bring to stage. I always bring quite a aesthetic, I can't say that word, aesthetic looking physique to stage, and I like that, and I will always bring that no matter what. If they told me to literally be like, lose all your muscle and come in really, really soft, then I would be like, this isn't for me anymore. Do you know what I mean? You've always got to
Yes.
make sure that you're bringing something that you want to stage as much as the judges are. Obviously, don't bring like massive legs and a really like huge bum to stage and they're going to be like, well, this isn't bikini type thing. Obviously hitting that criteria, but in your own way.
Yes, I love that. And I love the way that you said that. And I think it's cool that you mentioned, if this if the criteria, let's say, and the way it applies to your own body becomes something that you can't actually bear or you don't like or enjoy, why do it? Maybe you can
Yeah.
find something else to compete in or pursue, maybe another league or maybe another category that does fit your
Yeah.
needs. And
Because I do competing for myself. I do because I love competing because it gives me such a good satisfaction of doing it for myself. If I start doing it because people are telling, like, trying to fit a criteria that people are telling me to, in terms of like, you need to not do this and not do that and not do that, then that comes down to then asking, okay, is this something I want to do? If you're taking away everything that I enjoy out of the sport, then why am I doing it? Do you know what I mean?
yes.
I kind of had that slight little feeling of a little bit this weekend, because I'm a lot bigger. We did all my measurements and stuff at the prep convention center at Team Elite Physique, and he was like, you're a lot muscular than I thought, and he was comparing my results to kind of other competitors he's had in and stuff. And it was difficult because there's a lot of stuff that we've had to take out in terms of training and stuff like that. And it's for me, it's a little bit sad, because I'm like, I love training hard and heavy and lifting and being strong, and taking that away, I was like, that feels like it's taking a little bit of me away. But
Mm.
also, I've got to realize that it's not taking who I am away. It's just fine tuning what I'm doing. Like, I want to go to the Olympia. I want to go on the Olympia stage and do well. Do you know what I mean? And it's just getting that fine tuning to do that. And that's kind of why I had to split apart, because I had that feeling. I was like, I'm not going to be able to train hard and heavy for so long now, but I'm willing to take that sacrifice to kind of put my goal into place, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, and it's the aligned action. What's required
Yeah.
for you to actually get where you want to go? What is it like? What does your dream require of you, and are you willing to put that effort in? And I remember one of your posts you wrote, one day you can be the champion, and the next minute you may not be the champion. And you went on to say that this is something that actually inspires you to continuously put outside of your comfort zone. What are some of the ways that you do like to push yourself every day, or what are some things that you're currently having to do that are different than what you were doing and really enjoying?
Well, for me, well, again, joining Team Elite Physique is very different to what I was doing previously. So what I was doing previously, in terms of training, was progressive overload, and I was training kind of every body part: back, shoulders, triceps, shoulders, legs, glutes, quads, everything. Um, but for me, my feedback a lot of the time was my upper body is developing very quickly, in terms of it's kind of hitting out of the bikini mark, but not figure. It's not big enough for figure, so it's just in the middle. And switching and going over to Adam, he's kind of fine-tuned that and said, right, we are going to have to tone down upper body training. We're going to have to tone down quads and stuff. Like, it's a lot more the 1% details that I need to pay attention to in terms of reaching my goal of cracking the top 5 of Olympia type thing. And for me, that's a sacrifice I'm kind of willing to take. Like, I can't really train quads anymore. We're not doing any direct quad work anymore. It's only going to be glutes and hamstrings. I don't train back anymore. I don't and that's it. And I train shoulders, but not as heavy as I usually would. And he said, the thing is, we can leave all the heavy training for your off season. You can still heavy train in your off season, but at the moment, it's just going to have to be a little bit of a back burner, and kind of making sure you're still working out, but not as hard and heavy as before, because we don't want to gain as much muscle, which for me is like, I love lifting heavy. I love it as a girl, especially as a woman. I love it. So for me, that was a bit of a massive change. But like I said before, I'm willing to make that change. It's not like I'm changing who I am, and it's not like I'm putting my health at risk by taking any supplements or anything like that to comprehend what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? It's not
Mm.
something like a massive change. It's only changing my training, my style of training.
Yeah,
So yeah.
could be much worse.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I've kind of said, because I've gone on a lot of other podcasts, and a lot of people are like, that's really strange. Like, you can't train back, and you're not directly training quads, and you're not doing this and that. And do you not feel sad? And I'm like, no, because it's getting me to where I want to be. Like, I want to be Miss Olympia one day. I want to crack the top 5, top 10. Like, I'm willing to back off of my heavy lifting to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And then, in the grand scheme of life, right, our competitive years, right, or the years we're really invested into competing and getting to the top, maybe aren't they're like a small percentage. They make a big impact in who we are in our life, but it's a small percentage of our life. So, it's not like you'll never train back again. Not like you'll never train back. And I think in your brain, you understand that. It's like, this is the means to the end, right? This is what's required, and I'm okay with that. And you know I kind of touching, it kind of goes back to like mindset work, right? And the things that we have to do as an athlete. And I think some people hear that they should be doing mindset work, or they should be working on their mindset, or it almost seems like, oh yeah, like if I just look at a motivational video every day, I'm working on my mindset. But that's not really the case. So
No.
what would you say, like, what are some things that you do daily to work on your mindset?
Well, oh, I'm trying to think now. I at the beginning of the day, kind of like, as cheesy as it sounds, kind of writing either a gratitude list or something that I really am appreciative of, or not even writing it down, just kind of thinking in your own brain, because sometimes writing things down can be stressful, and then you think, oh, I need to write it down, and I can't like physically write it. So sometimes I don't write it down, but I just think about it and kind of really get in touch with competing in general, what I'm actually grateful for within competing. Like, why am I grateful that I'm competing? I'm so happy that I can get in touch with loads of people and kind of spread my inspiration and motivation to others. That's something I'm really grateful for, and I always say that every morning, and I tell myself that every morning. Another thing is kind of like just making sure that, I don't know, that making sure that you're really truly in touch with like what you're wanting to do when it comes to competing. Like, I always ask myself, like, why do I want to do this? Like, I think the main thing, mostly what I ask myself, kind of not every day, but most of the days, is why am I competing? Because you need to make sure that you know why you are. You need to make sure that you're fully in touch with that, with your mindset, because it's so difficult to truly get in touch with what you're wanting to do when it comes to competing.
I love that. And how did you realize, or when did you realize that doing this mindset work and getting so in touch with it and really grounding yourself in these ideas and these motivations and the whys, like when did you realize that was so important?
I think it was probably, I think it was actually, well, it's always been in my mind. It's always been in my mind. I think it was straight after my first year of competing, was where I kind of realized, like, it's a lot more than just training and a diet. It's a lot more than just investing in kind of a daily schedule of, okay, I need to eat this, I need to train that. Because if you just end up just doing that, it's not going to work. You need to be fully invested in it mentally as well, because it can be really hard mentally, because you can only turn down a certain amount of events, a certain amount of family meals, a certain, all of this stuff, and it gets to your brain, it really gets to you mentally. And struggle, like the struggle of not being lean enough, and the struggle of feeling, will I be ready, all of that is all through your brain. It's all yourself kind of not attacking yourself, but it's kind of you saying, this is what I want to do. And it kind of, I'm trying to figure out how I'm trying to say it, but in terms of like, it's yourself, not, like I said, not attacking, but being self-critical. A lot of the time, when it comes to body, when it comes to training and diet, you need to be mentally prepared for that, and it's difficult trying to do that when you don't know how.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I remember like I built my business with the mission and the branding statement of build more than just a body for these exact reasons. I remember after my first show, that was when I realized, oh my gosh, fitness is about so much more
Yes.
than any of this. And like without working on again, mindset work now to me is like a meal plan, right? I can't imagine not following something of mindset work. I can't imagine not having it in my life. And there are some times where writing things down seems so I don't want to do this, but that's not the only thing we have to do. And I like that you said that and touched on that. And there is so much more than the diet and training. And of course, the things in our mind, like those limiting beliefs or that little voice that tells us, you're not going to be ready. All of that's just coming from fears or experiences or things that we have taken on, from our environment or the people we're following. And it's like this social psychology of comparison or of standards and expectations. And those are all things that we can monitor and almost control within our own brain the more we practice. It's a muscle, right? Like our
Yeah.
mind is a muscle.
Literally, I think you said fear. That was a
Mhm.
massive, massive word that always that literally just hit me, because that was a major part of my first 2 years of competing, was fear. Always fear, 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 because what's the fear of other people? What would they think? I'm going on stage, standing in a bikini and kind of prancing around. The fear of what they would think of me, the fear of not being ready, the fear of not being enough, all of that all comes down to your mindset, and it all comes down to how you handle your fear.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so grateful that you shared that, because fear is normal and it's necessary, and it keeps us from jumping off of cliffs and driving our car into a wall and
Yeah.
doing things that aren't going to be serving us. But it's also a great form of resistance training, right? It is such a
Yeah.
powerful tool. It is like a weight in our mind, literally, that we have to pick up and move and say, stay in the back seat, or, like, stay on that shelf. I don't need you right now. And
Yes.
fear, from just what I've learned and whatnot, is like a direct reflection of an identity disconnect, as well as usually from, of course, conditioning from our past or experiences we've had and stories we tell ourselves. And a lot of those stories are then connected to identity and, all these different things. So in regard to overcoming fear, there's a lot of different ways we could do this, and I like to
Yeah.
think of it like almost like a diagnosis and a treatment plan, right? So when someone has an extreme fear, there's a lot of different types of therapy that can treat this. And one of the best therapies that I was taught anyways in like the psychology degree that I've gotten, I'm currently getting, is called exposure therapy. That means you expose yourself to the fear. And in competing, this is like one of the best ways we could do it. You just gotta
Literally,
step on
you're
stage.
exposing your whole body on
Yes,
stage.
go for it. Like literally, you're exposing yourself not only to them, but also to yourself and to your fears, and facing them head on. If you're afraid of a snake, it is the scariest thing to go and touch a snake. But the closer you get, okay, who breathing, I'm almost there. I'm gonna touch the snake. Wow, it wasn't that bad. I didn't get bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly, 100%. Exposure is like exposing yourself to your fears mentally is so strong and so powerful, because like it needs to be done. It, like you said, it's so needed, because otherwise you'll just be scared of it forever. Like people go years. Like my dad, it's weird you mentioned snakes, because my dad is terrified of snakes, and he will never ever go near one, like at all, and like ever again. I know that this isn't a situation where he ever would need to,
Yes.
but it's the same as your goals. Like if you're scared of, say, example, if you really don't like the way your body looks, but you also love the desire to compete, and like the process of competing you really want to do, but you really don't want to get on stage, you're never going to get on stage unless you get past that first fear of like accepting your body and being like, I'm going to improve on it, and let's just go, like exposing it, like you said. So yeah, that's a massive thing. Yeah, massive. I love that word, exposing yourself to your fear. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Open the curtain, it's time to show up, make things happen. And it's crazy. Sometimes we don't realize, like, we could be so close to our fear and it's not hurting us. Like,
Yeah.
you could be walking down the street and a snake could be in the bushes. You'd never know. And similarly, you could be doing your, sprints on the treadmill, and you could be, anyone could fall flat on their face. Hopefully not while they're listening to this podcast, but they can fall flat on their face. It's right there. We're always so close to something that we're afraid of. And yet we live every single day and we rarely encounter them. So then
Yes.
we get to actually push our comfort zones in different ways and new ways. And it creates more resiliency. And I think that, that's why, you're focusing so much on the mindset, because it helps you to do that. And I love that. So I know, I honestly feel like there have been so many golden nuggets on this episode, and I freaking love it. Like, I feel like we could just go on and on. And
I know. I'm literally like, how long has it been?
I know, I was looking at the time, I was like, oh, okay, shoot. Well, I remember when I started this podcast, I was like, okay, they're gonna be like 30-minute episodes, blah blah, and I'm like, no, if I had 30-minute episodes, I couldn't even just talk for 30 minutes. Come
I
on.
know.
So I want to just wrap things up a little bit by asking you for, what is your advice for a newbie competitor? And then what is your best advice for a competitor who's committed to getting their pro card?
Okay, so a newbie competitor, my advice would be go out there and enjoy the process 100%. And like even for advanced people as well, but I'll touch on that in a sec. But as a newbie, experience and enjoy every single part of the process. Enjoy your cardio, even if it makes you feel like really rubbish. Always know that the end is going to be great, because you're like, I got through that, like that was amazing. Pull every single positive out of your journey as much as you can, especially as a newbie, like so much, because you'll look back, and I would want you to enjoy competing. I wouldn't want you to resent competing for any certain way, because the thing is, what a lot of people seem to do, like you said before, they compare themselves to other pros, and they really put in the dedication and hard work as an amateur, which is amazing, but they don't enjoy the process, and they look back and think, why do I compete? And then they stop competing. So you really need to make sure that you enjoy every minute of your prep, and make sure you're doing it for yourself 100%. So those two things, make sure you're doing it for yourself and you know why, and enjoy the process 100%. Make sure you're enjoying every part of it, and make sure you're not doing anything that you don't want to. Don't let anyone force you into doing something you don't want to, or force yourself into something that you don't want to do. Always make sure that you understand what you're doing and you want to do it. Yeah, so that's for newbies. For advanced people wanting to get their pro card, never give up, because for me, I was chasing my pro card probably for about 2 years, no, for 2.5 years, I think it was 2.5 years, yeah. And it was tough, because like I said at the beginning, there was only one way to get a pro card in the UK, and that was literally you for one girl and one guy a year. That's all we got.
Wow.
And I didn't, for 2 years I didn't get it, and I kept on going because I wanted it so badly. And for anyone trying to chase or get their pro card, you need to have that ambition. You need to make sure that you just do not give up. You keep going and you keep chasing, because it will happen.
I love that. I'm taking notes. I love it. The word ambition. I love that.
So hard
Um,
because
yeah, that
it's
is
hard.
just awesome.
The pro league is so advanced. It's the best league in the world. So it's so hard, as like you don't, again, like for people that don't have their pro card or they're trying to get their pro card, it's so hard, like I said before, to visualize yourself getting your pro card or seeing yourself have your pro card, because you're like, that's never going to happen to me. And that's exactly how I was for so long. I was like, this is never going to happen to me. Like, why am I even trying? But I'm trying and I'm doing, because I want to be in that position. And I'm very much a believer of, I don't know what it's called, but like, well, no, actually, no, envisioning. I'm very much a person, I believe in envisioning. So I envision myself getting that pro card every single day, how I would react when the mic guy would like pass me my massive pro card. Like, I would envision that on the cardio every single day, like until I won my pro card. And I still do that now in terms of like getting my Olympia qualifications and my points and all of that type of thing. I envision a lot. And I think that's a lot of what people need to do. Even actually beginners can do this as well, envisioning themselves on stage as a whole. Especially advanced people trying to get their pro card, envision yourself getting your pro card, envision how it feels. It actually gives me goosebumps like now, like envisioning what just envisioning how you'd get your pro card is very, very insane. It's just crazy.
I love that. Yeah, envisioning, is such a powerful tool for anything in life. And I like that you explained how you had to use that for so long, but it paid off and you were able to see that. I know, like, in the past, I'd like hear like the person in my head. Like, I'd watch
Yeah,
I would watch like the videos on NPC News or on Muscle Contest, and I'd listen to the announcer, and then I'd hear them saying my own voice, and I could remember every judge's face. I could remember the sound of literally like them calling my number. I could feel the stage lights, like getting into that physiological state of feeling those things happen, I think is so powerful. And that's why I love that you said, see yourself on stage and feel what it's like to get your pro card, feel what it's like to be on stage, feel what it's like to get that qualification.
Yeah. And 100% beginners, like I said, can do that as well, as in like envisioning themselves on stage. But I would say until you've done a few shows, like obviously if you go into a first show and you're like, I want to get my pro card, that's amazing. But just give yourself a bit of time to enjoy like I said before, enjoy the process. And it's exactly the same with your getting your pro card as well. Make sure you're still enjoying the process and not doing something that you don't want to do, or it's something that you really hate, but you're just doing it to get your pro card, because otherwise, like I said, why are you doing it?
Yeah, I think so. And you just provide so much value on this episode, and the amount of internal gains I feel like can be made from this is just awesome. And I've really, really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. And I love for everybody else to, of course, thank you as well, or give a shout out, because a lot of people like to screenshot the episode or share, their takeaways from it. So I want them to be able to tag you or follow you or connect with you. So where can they find you, work with you, all that good stuff?
Well, my main kind of page is Instagram, obviously. So my Instagram is Phoebe Hagan _. And then I also have a YouTube channel, which a lot of people like to watch. I share a lot of my journey. I'm very, very open on there. I share everything, my highs, my lows, my food, my training, how I feel like at a certain amount of weeks out, my show day vlogs, all of that. So that's just Phoebe Hagan. And if you wanted to possibly get a posing class with me, or an online consultant for online coaching or anything like that, you can also go through I think it's my link in my bio through my Instagram anyway. So yeah, my main platforms are my Instagram, which is Phoebe Hagan _, and then Phoebe Hagan on YouTube.
Awesome. I love it. And I'm going to make sure all of those links are in the show notes page. So to everybody listening, thank you guys so, so much for coming on. If you want to get those show notes and also, of course, connect with Phoebe, go to Instagram, or you can just go to www.celestial.fit/podcast. There's always a category section, as you guys know, or you can just go straight from this page. So with all that being said, I hope you guys have an absolutely amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.